Gambit, still in the game, still fundamentally flawed. It can be fixed, I think. Let's go. Gambit was a selling point in an expansion that began with one of the most beloved characters of this entire franchise die. Gambit was so popular that designers actually had been wanting to create tournaments around it. Gambit was so popular that an entire season was mainly dedicated to this advanced version of the game mode. It has been patched, it has been altered, it has been reworked and patched again many times. Gambit has failed. Now, I like this game mode because it is a playlist alternate activity that you can just turn your brain off, podcast and shoot things. It showed so much potential when it first came out. I don't want to go over the history of this game mode because it's so long, from basic to prime to whatever that we have today. All that is important for this video to make sense is the following. Gambit was once massively popular because it was a very unique take on the symmetrical PvE VP, and now a few days before the launch of Lightfall, Gambit is memed on and made fun of alongside Gambit players and their demands. It appears that the only dichotomy that is allowed among Destiny players is PvE endgame lovers and PvP sweatlord tryhards. There's always a middle ground, and those who just want to play and have fun. And I always believe that Gambit is the most unique feature of Destiny 2. Now, I can defend this statement. PvE, and then there's PvP. See, with PvE, you got your grinding, you got your weapon crafting, you got your maxing, mining, and everything in between. And it's about running in good circles in chase of 1% better gear. With PvP, you have the KD ratio to flaunt. You have jump shots, snipe shots, team carries, you got trials. And somewhere between these two lies Gambit, which I think wanted to mix the best features of the two worlds, with the farming and grinding and picking up motes and banking, which is kind of like a resemblance of PvE. And then you have the invasion and shooting things and shooting enemies in the PvP aspect of it. But that's just the idea. That's just what was written on a paper or on some whiteboard somewhere. Right now, the reality is something else. I do not know, really, of any other game who tried and succeeded this amalgamation better than Forsaken's version of Gambit. It had everything, to attract the audience. The design, the presentation, the audio work, the motive, the maps, the mysterious person hosting it, a secret exotic weapon and items, the chaos, the fighting, some team synergy, or idea for some light build crafting for boss bakes. However, the activity lost its mojo because we, the player base, like to chew on the content left, right, and center, and there came a time where demands for the new things related to this game mode did not meet the supply or the development care and, capacity for it. We had Gambit Prime, but this topic will not go anywhere. Gambit Prime is basically like pineapple on pizza. Some hate it, some love it. Nobody agrees. Personally, I loved the Prime mode because it felt like I could contribute to the PvE side of things while my PvP friends can handle the invasions and the defensing and everything else. But that's just the extent of this conversation. Then came sunsetting, pinnacles getting removed, rituals being homogenized, and this game mode alongside Crucible falling more and more into a total state of disrepair and disarray. And that is where we find ourselves today. While I still like to believe that Gambit is one of the priorities for Bungie and the development team, every decision or, well, lack thereof that they have been regarding this game mode point to the direction that maybe the big grand majority of the player base is actually right, and people like me, the minority who likes this game mode very passionately, may be wrong. Maybe Gambit does suck. Maybe it does need to be deleted. Maybe it needs to be completely taken out of the game and reworked and like put back into the game. But I still would like to make my argument and case for the 3 people who think like me. Let's look at this game mode from an objective point of view, impartial and as it is. It is a race to spawn a big boss by killing enemies and banking motes. The first team to bank 100 spawns their boss and has a higher chance of killing the boss and therefore winning. The Gambit part of it is that at specific intervals during this race, one player can leave their team and invade the other team for a chance at killing the enemy and maybe stealing their motes. If the invader kills an enemy while the enemy's boss is spawned, every death heals the boss for a considerable amount. What is wrong with this system? On paper, it seems like a fun, speedy action adventure with all sorts of combat depending on your playstyle. You can be a team player, you can help with the blockers the enemy sends to impede your progress, or you can invade and be an absolute menace. The big problem is that once you learn how the enemies spawn, where the invasions happen, and which weapons can be more effective in invasion, every Gambit match converges into a single playstyle. Repetition is not a tool for teaching just for teaching. Repetition is actually not a bad tool for learning or teaching, but in video games, repetition needs to bear some healthy mixture of randomization and unexpectancy, some degree of, hey, that's new, or wow, I had not seen that before, can bring a lot of life to this almost dead or dying game type. How do we introduce this randomization? More variety is the simplest answer. With the Beyond Light campaign and the sunsetting of a lot of things before it, 2 Gambit maps were also taken out of the game. It's kind of odd seeing the Io or the Mars maps still in rotation while a Dreaming City map was taken out of the game, and the Dreaming City is still in the game while Io and Mars are not there anymore. You have the argument for Mars, but you get my point. So we need a couple of those maps back. We need a couple new maps, maybe a couple new boss types, maybe have the now new threat and search system, fire team modifiers active and rotate in and out of the game mode. All of these things can be a very good smart, and I don't know, but I don't think adding modifiers to Gambit takes a lot of development time. I'm not sure. Maybe I'm completely wrong. Anybody remember the Meatball and the Malfeasance quest? Imagine if after 3 years we had another secret boss, exotic weapon and chain quest. That would be something. An Entropy auto rifle or SMG, for example. Entropy, by the way, is the element of Malfeasance, which I always thought would be our first Darkness subclass, but that's neither here nor there. Moving from basics, let's look at mechanics. Why not 2 invaders? Why not a whole 4v4 invasion phase? Why not bringing the roles back? And if anything could come back, while I love Gambit Prime, I still feel like the round-based Gambit matches of the OG Forsaken days could really be fun with the Mayhem modifier in the last round. Obviously, I am not a game dev, and I do not know much anything about game development, but I understand design. A good design can be interacted with for a very long time. I think the Gambit in its current state is just alive. It's not exciting after a couple dozen matches. You have a pretty good understanding of how a match of Gambit would go and which weapons are good for invasion, xenophage, and which weapons are good for the boss spike, Galahorn or swords. With all of these things said, the one thing that really saddens my heart is there hasn't been a single mention in any of the last TWAPs for the past few months of this game mode. I hope Bungie don't decide to sunset this hybrid game design philosophy, especially when the Fortress was introduced in Iron Banner. And when I saw the Cabal tanks, like my Gambit Spidey senses started tingling. Maybe Bungie were or are still looking at ways to mixing up PvP and PvE in a more chaotic way. Finally, what I intend to do in Nightfall and Season of Defiance would be what I have done every season, what I have been doing for the past probably 3 years, 2 years. Play enough to re-guild my Dredgen and probably not touch the game mode again until the next season comes, unless someone asks me to play with them or accompany them for some helping, which is way far and few in between these past months. If Gambit falls, sadly, I don't think the explosion would impact a lot. The building is still there, but the cracks are showing in its foundation and walls. I hope I'm wrong, and I hope this is just another passing phase. PvP players are not happy, PvE players are bored, and us Gambit players are unhappy and disinterested. Apathy is the true Destiny killer. I don't want to be one. I'll see you in the next video. Thank you so much for watching. Stay safe, stay sane. This, as always, has been Wicked, signing off.